Rossi on him. Oh, mine at school. I have to. Okay, so now I should be. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, that's okay. We're we're clicked. Okay. Thank you, sir. And that window is like right in your face. Oh my word. I'll be off. I'll be okay. Oh, I think I will. What's that? Oh, you did? Okay, I guess we're starting now. Good morning. Welcome to Bible Training Hour, where we're going to talk about paganism. Okay, not exactly, but good morning. So years ago, I was listening to a podcast, and it was on the history of Rome, and it'll come up later, and it got me asking questions because of something that the podcaster said. And so that'll come up in a minute. But today's topic is something that if you've encountered it, I hope it helps you, and I hope it comforts you and gives you an answer to help you understand that you're not a pagan. But if you've never thought about this before, I apologize. No, but this will be interesting. I think we'll have a good time. So let's go ahead and pray. This will be more of like a lecture thing, so I don't have a lot of Bible verses here. It's more of a historical study, but I think it'll be valuable. So let's go ahead and pray. God, we love you. Lord, we are thankful the way you help us answer questions that we have, especially the kind that sometimes gnaw at our souls and we don't want to talk about them. And so I do pray, Lord, that today this question would help us. I pray that if we happen to hear things out in the culture, or perhaps an opponent of Christianity were to throw one of these arguments our way, I pray that this would help us to know that there are answers out there and we're not pagan. Lord, we love you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so imagine a Christian walking into a room. Okay, a Christian walks into the room, and here's what the room looks like. It is decorated with satanic pentagrams. On the wall, there's a painting of Hindu deities. On the mantle are some traditional Aztec idols, and on the back wall is a large painting of Thor and Odin. Okay, put yourself in that position. Immediately, a shaman-type figure walks up to you and says, "Would you like to worship the All-Father in our human sacrifice ritual?" All right, what would a true believer do in that scenario? Put up a Christmas tree, right? Let's do this. No, you're going to walk out. You're going to leave, and probably very quickly, right? So when a Christian encounters paganism, I want to make the case that there's never a time a true believer is going to be confused about something in paganism and wondering if that's what they do, okay? There's not enough overlap. And Christmas, I'm going to say Christian and Christmas all the time, I'm sorry. Christmas has some overlap with some paganism in the past. Now, when I say that, some of you are like, but it's very minimal, and I wouldn't even say it's on purpose. And I don't think that, personally, I'll tell you where my conscience is. Your conscience may be elsewhere, and that's fine. But I don't have any problems with Christmas trees or things like that. I'm not a fan of Santa. If you are, I don't judge you. But I think there's problems with that. But, I don't walk up to Santas on the street and punch them or anything like that, I'm not like going through the neighborhood with my BB gun and shooting all the Santa blow up. Like, nah. All right, so, but there, some of you are like, I do that. I thought that was okay. All right. So there's no question about it. A believer knows that worship is reserved for God and God alone, but some have said that Christians are just as pagan as the shaman in the fictional story above. Now, this is where it comes into that podcast. So I was listening to a podcast called The History of Rome by Mike Duncan. It's my second favorite podcast ever. And it's so good, so good. My Sunday school class back in the day, Tim, bless his heart, probably got tired of hearing historical facts and tidbits from it. But in it, I was going to clean some windows one day, and the historian doing the podcast got to the Feast of Saturnalia and pointed out how it's basically a carbon copy of our current Christian Christmas, not the cultural Christmas, but the Christian Christmas. And then made the hint that you Christians are basically pagans. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't think I was a pagan. But when he says something like that, essentially what kind of an argument is he making? This back there in history is this thing, and Christians have a thing that looks almost identical. This thing is fake over here. Christianity and Christmas is just an example of another fake religion like all of these other man-created religions. And so it can be something that might shock you or maybe even cause you to question your faith. And so today I just want to walk through a little bit about the pagan origins, so-called, and explain to you why I don't think you need to worry about them. All right, so the way we'll go forward is we're just going to answer this, we're going to look at 2 Roman holidays that have some overlap. Then we're going to look a little bit at some historical considerations, and then I'll have an illustration for you, and then we'll be done, and hopefully you will have a Merry Christmas. All right, let's go ahead. All right, so there's a couple of pagan holidays in ancient Rome I want to talk about. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so I'm sorry for sniffling. All right, so the first one is Saturnalia. Saturnalia. Now, this holiday was for the god that was named Saturn. Now, I'm going to say God all the time, talking about these pagan deities. I don't actually think they're gods. So I mean false gods, but if I say God, I'm not promoting that. All right, so where does Saturn come from? Well, the Romans' use of the Greek deity Cronus. Now, Cronus was a Greek deity, and if you know anything about Rome, have you ever seen that meme where Mr. Bean is like copying off someone else's quiz, and then at the last minute he's like looking away? And oftentimes you'll see like Westminster Standards and the London Baptist Confession of Faith. That's like the nerdy theological joke, but it could be any sort of a thing. That is always Greece and Rome. Greece is the original, may we even say the OG, and Rome just copies Greece's quiz all the time. So there's a famous statement by a Roman historian that Rome ends up conquering Greece, but the quote basically points out that Greece's culture ends up conquering Rome because they just copy all the things. So that's why you have the Greek god Zeus, but the Roman god, which is identical, is Jupiter. You have all these borrowings and copyings. Again, if you're just looking for something to use, no big deal. You can do that kind of thing. If something's actually true, you don't do those things. So Rome's always copying Greece's quiz. Saturn, was an agricultural god in their mind. So Kronos was a Titan, son of the god Uranus, or if you may pronounce it Uranus or Uranus. You may not like either of those. If you want to use the Greek pronunciation, just say Uranos. It means heaven. So that's the sky god. And then Gaia, that's the earth god. And he was the king of the Titans. There's another Greek god named Kronos. Looks like the word for time. So there's Kronos, and then Kronos. They're different. This is the god of time. The one we're talking about is the god of agriculture. But don't worry, eventually Rome copies this quiz too, and all three get lumped together anyways. But the one we're talking about is an agricultural god. He was the god of the harvest, and he was also, his symbol was a scythe, so like harvesting. That was Cronus. Saturn was an Italian god of sowing, of seeds, and then also of wealth. So both of these false gods had something to do with agriculture. And the Saturn false god was a golden age deity, but eventually Rome just merged Saturn's cult with Cronus's cult and made them like the one thing. So that is the agricultural god of the Romans. When would they celebrate this god? It was at the winter solstice. Now, the solstice is where the Earth's days get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. It's at its furthest point in its orbit, and then the next day it's like a little longer. That's the solstice, okay? Solstice. That is when they would worship or celebrate Saturn. And they did this after the harvest was finished, because usually that was a time when the harvest would be finished for them. His festival was named Saturnalia. It started off as a single day, And eventually in history, it stretched to be as long as a week at times, so a very long festival. Most historians think that the festival usually started around December 17th, but if you go back like year to year in history, sometimes the date fluctuates. And then just also remember, we have cool calendars that are like tuned down to like leap years. They didn't have that back then, so like some of this stuff squishes from year to year. Not, that's just for them, that would have been very precise, but not for us. But most of its history, its celebration always either landed on or included December 25th. Now, what's for us on December 25th? Christmas. So that's the number one crossover. People are like, same day, must be the same thing. All right, hold that thought. What was the celebration like? It was basically a very festive week. They had a lot of partying and frivolity, so they had feasts often during the week, celebrations, that kind of thing. They did role swapping. So they would just swap roles with people, and I'll just explain this, and I don't know any parallel today. There were TV shows where people would swap parts of their family, but I don't think that's probably not worth mentioning. They had farmhands who would then, like at the feast, they would get served by their landowners. And so instead of them doing the serving, the landowner would do the serving. At other times, slaves would all be seated at the feast, and then the master would be the one bringing the food around and serving the slaves. So it was a big flip-flop. What it actually reminds me of, not trying to be offensive, if you're a Downton Abbey fan, it's like the servants' ball at Christmas, where like they get to do all the dancing with the aristocrats or whatever. What's that? I don't even know what Boxing Day is. It is. So I thought it was Boxing Day. Okay. Anyways, so that's good. So then there's also goodwill toward men. And this is the phrase I think actually I was trying to track it down. But there was a general goodwill toward men sentiment that prompted exchanging gifts. So what do we got? We have partying and being festive. We have general goodwill toward men. And we have giving each other gifts even on December 25th. Come on. Are we not worshipers of Saturn? Now, hold. Okay, hold. There's another element we should talk about for the festival of Saturnalia. There's a key difference, okay? A couple of key differences. Number one, there's the gift giving. There's the celebrating. It is on or near the date of December 25th. That does seem rather similar to Christmas. However, beware of people putting up a couple of similarities of one thing and saying, look, that makes it identical with this other thing over here. That's the podcast I talked about. Mike Duncan, he's like, hey, look at Saturnalia, look at Christmas. You Christians are just pagans, okay? Now, you could do this in a number of ways to show how that kind of thinking isn't conclusive. If I said, I'm wearing a long-sleeved top right now. John over there, it looks like he's wearing a long-sleeved top. You put your arm up, John. Yep, he's wearing a long-sleeved top. We are the same person. You see that? Look at that. Hey, do you like coffee? I like coffee. We're twins. We were probably cloned at birth. I tell you right there. Now, how do you know that John and I aren't the same person? Okay. Like maybe that much. Well, yes. What if we were the same height, though? Would we be the same person? No. So you understand there are differences that are at the essence level, like a thing can't be the thing if those things are different. And then there are differences that are just accidental or they're variety, that it's not a big deal. And so here I would say that oftentimes when people say Christmas is a pagan holiday, they're citing accidental similarities that don't actually make up the substance. So let me give you an example. Drinking was the main thing that they did during Saturnalia. It was a week of getting blitzed, like drink, 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 be drunk the whole time. That was the essence of it. That sounds a little different, okay? like pretty different, okay? Debauchery and licentious behaviors would have been considered essential workers at this party. So, like in COVID, like essential workers could go out, but no one else could. Well, being debaucherous and licentious, that was like a big deal. That was part of this. Now, you're thinking, well, really, was it required? Hold on. There's a poet named Lucian who lived in this time period, and he wrote a play, and in the play, Saturn is interacting. And so someone asks Saturn why, or asks him about the celebration in his honor. And this is how Saturn replies. No, it's not really Saturn, but I'm trying to say that a poet of the day is personifying Saturn in his play, and he says, this is what Saturn would say. Now, I think that's someone like in the time period who understands the celebration, and whatever they say is going to have, like, in my mind, a lot of weight to really describe it well. So this is what he says. Mine is a limited monarchy, you see. To begin with, it only lasts a week. That over, I'm a private person. I'm just a man on the street that week. So, like, he's descending. Secondly, during my week, the serious is barred. No business allowed. Drinking and being drunk, noise and games and dice, appointing kings and feasting of slaves, singing naked, clapping of tremulous hands, and occasional ducking of corked faces in icy water. Such are the functions over which I preside. Now, that doesn't sound like any Baptist potluck I have ever been to. I mean, at Cambridge, we got kind of wild, but not like, no, like never. Once in a while, we might make a joke, but I mean, there's none of this. Or I would say this. So I grew up in a broad evangelical context, and so we had potlucks. And then I married my first wife, Robin, who was from a like Garb Baptist, like a real Baptist context. And the first time she came to a potluck, she's like, why are there pizzas and Kentucky Fried Chicken here? I'm like, it's a potluck. I didn't realize you made your own food. Like, people just bought stuff and like I'm just saying, like, if a Baptist potluck were to get wild, it would be like we brought a bunch of food we bought because we didn't want to cook, okay? This is not a wild Baptist potluck. This is not like, man, for like 1,500 years, the Christians only got drunk for a whole week at Christmas, but then we read the Bible and thought, well, maybe we don't want to do that anymore. That's not like how this goes. So what I'm trying to point out is that Saturnalia looks a lot more like a kegger, okay? Like a party, like Visha back in the day, for those of you who know what that is. That's what this, or Mardi Gras or Carnival, that's what Saturnalia sounds like. That doesn't look to me like the way Christians celebrate the birth of their Savior. So when Mike Duncan on that podcast said, look at what Saturnalia is and look at what Christianity is, he only showed me two of the similarities that you could use to prove John and I are the same person, even though we're not. So you have to be really careful. When an opponent lobs out an argument, you have to ask questions about it. You have to do some research. You have to find out, are they being fair and honest, or are they just throwing out some stuff that seems good enough? Because most people have a reason to not be a Christian. They don't want it to be true. So I don't think you can say Saturnalia looks like it. Now let's talk about the next one, Sol Invictus. Sol Invictus. So for Sol Invictus, the god that is worshipped, the false god that is worshipped, is the sun, or Sol. And the history of this cult is fascinating because it connects backward in time to the Syrian sun god. Does anyone know what the name of the Syrian sun god is? You might have heard of him before. His name's Baal. Now, the word Baal means Lord, and so a lot of deities went by the name Baal, but it is in Syria, and it's like in that region, so it's really intriguing to me, like, if there's like a giant conspiracy to oppose God's plan, okay. I mean, I don't know if they're the same. Now, there's another one. There's the Sol is also known as Mithra. So, like, if you go into Persia, you have Ahura Mazda, the god that they would follow, the false god. And at times, Mithra was the name. And then in history, they would say that Sol and Mithra are the same god. They're just two manifestations. That's what the followers would say. Why I'm starting there is because all of this sounds a lot more like the Canaanite practices coming forward into Greek and Roman times. I can't totally prove that, but it has that character for sure. Now, when would they celebrate the worship of this deity? It would be on December 25th. Now, that was around the time of the winter solstice. So remember, they don't have calendars, and so that's the date they're aiming at. But they're trying to get it at the winter solstice. Now, for them, the reason they celebrate on that day is because the sun, or Sol, Invictus means undefeatable or invincible. And so the days are getting shorter and shorter. You're in an agrarian world. Your livelihood depends on there being sun. I mean, it's really cold today. Like, I don't like cold that much. And when the days get longer, you can't be cold like this. And so as soon as the days turn and it starts to get longer, they want to celebrate the undefeatable sun that always defeats darkness, because now the days are getting longer. So hence that would be their feast of the unconquerable sun, the Sol Invictus. In 274, in the Roman Empire, Emperor Aurelian made this the official religion of the entire Roman Empire. I guess Baal gets a promotion at that point. And so all of Rome would have then been, in some sense, made or forced into worshiping Sol Invictus, or they would call it the solar cult. That's the word they would have used for it. So here you have another pagan type of worship that, if I look back in time, I think it seems kind of resemblant of Canaanite stuff, okay? What would they do in their celebration? Well, they would have chariot races. They would also do gift giving, and they would also make wishes for other people at their festivities. And so that sounds a lot more tame. Now, I didn't do a ton of research into it. My assumption is there's also some immoral activities going on. But I think rather than looking in that direction, let's look in another direction. So 274, that happens. Historically, something really big happens in 313. Anybody? Anyone? What? It's Constantine. Yeah, that's the Edict of I can't remember. Edict of Tolerance. Basically, he makes it so that you can be a Christian if you want to in the empire, and you're not going to be in trouble. And Constantine actually favors Christianity. Just before him, Diocletian heavily persecutes Christians. They're really trying to rout this from the empire. Constantine's father was more open to Christianity because in the Eastern Empire, the persecution wasn't quite as bad as in the West. And so then Constantine wins the Battle of the Milvian Bridge after he has the vision of Christ in the clouds. And so he's like, oh, Christ is the one who made me victorious. So he himself follows Christ, but he has a nation of pagans. So he has to tread carefully. So he sort of makes it legal for people to become Christians, but at the same time, he does some things to pacify the pagans, like he makes some pagan statues, he lets a couple of feasts happen. He doesn't really make it legal like most people think. That doesn't happen for a couple hundred more years, but he's the one who definitely popularizes it and sets it on that path. Well, he dies, and his nephew Julian comes to power, and he's not a fan of Christianity. He wants Christianity out. So notice what he does. Now, why would he want it out? A lot of people were becoming Christian. Now, do you think everyone becoming Christian was truly becoming Christian in this time? Nope. If you wanted to go up the Roman ladder of offices, and you wanted to be at the top where Constantine was, and he followed Jesus, if just to do better in public, you're going to want to do that. And so you're going to adopt Christianity. It's kind of like all the people adopting cross jewelry after the Charlie Kirk and the woke stuff has passed. I'm not saying nobody's becoming open to Christianity because of that, but I'm saying there are probably some who this is the cultural thing now, and I'm doing that. And so the Eastern Empire becomes very culturally Christian, and the pagans who are in there still don't like that. So Julian tries to push that back. Here's how he tries to do it. He tries to revive the solar cult and make that the religion. So in 274, Aurelian makes it the official religion. 313, Constantine says you can worship whoever you want. I'm going to worship Christ. And then you have Julian, his nephew, in 361 saying, no, we need to be the solar cult. All right. If Christianity and the solar cult are the same thing, if they're that similar, why is this emperor trying to push people back to the solar cult? Just use the same thing, Christianity. It doesn't make any sense if they're that similar that a Roman emperor would want to go away from Christianity, if it's so similar, back to the solar cult, which it's just like that. So I think you can show from Sol Invictus, it actually looks like they're so dissimilar, it doesn't seem like it's actually the same thing. So in the day, if the two were the same belief or very, very similar, I don't think he would have argued against it. So those are two that are often said, this is where Christianity, or where Christmas came from. We'll talk a little bit more. Now, let's talk just a little bit about the origins of the Christmas celebration. All right, so Constantine does have a role here. In 312, he is converted to Christianity, and he wants to follow Christianity. So he legalizes Christianity in the empire, And he favors Christianity, but he does not abolish paganism. If he did that, he would upset the nation too much. So, for example, today, if you become one of the sides of the two political parties in America, because our nation is like kind of tight at different times, sometimes it's kind of like almost 50-50, sometimes 45-55, like we're not like 20% of us are on the one side and 80% are on the other. I don't think that's how it is. Now, the moderates in the middle, you got to say, where are they? If a person was running the country and wanted to keep peace, they've got to do something to assuage both sides. And Constantine is just trying to be wise. Leading up to when Constantine got in power, there were just lots of civil wars and lots of internal turmoil. It was not a peaceful time in the Roman Empire. So he's being kind of shrewd. I don't know if you remember way back when we talked about Baptist history. In England, Queen Elizabeth, so before her was Bloody Mary, who was very pro-Catholic and had killed a whole bunch of Protestants. And before her was her brother Philip, I think. And he pushed the whole country in the direction of Protestantism. And so churches didn't have any choice. Like, okay, now I guess we're a Protestant church. And then 5 years later when Mary's on the throne, well, I guess we're a Catholic church again. And they're not asking people in the churches, what do you think? When Mary comes to power, she realizes she's sitting on a powder keg. And this is going to explode. And so what does she do? She's like, as long as you follow my political rule, because she's the head of the Church of England, you can be more Catholic-leaning or you can be more Protestant-leaning. I don't care. But you got to follow what I say. And that was her way to keep peace and diffuse the situation. Constantine did the same thing. He's trying to keep peace with the pagans so there's not a massive uprising in the kingdom, and yet he really is convinced of this Christian thing, so he wants to push that forward. So one of the ways he did this is that he helped begin the first kind of what we would think of Christmas celebration in 350. And that's partly due to his influence in this. Now, did people not think about Jesus Christ being born before that or be happy about that or be celebrating about it? No, I think they read Luke 2 and they were very happy about it. But in a way where it's like a big kind of way that we would do it, it happens around that time. Now, why did it land on December 25th? This one, I'm going to give you my thoughts, but don't take them. Do your own research. So I think most people would say that's not really when Christ was born. He's probably born some other time of the year. Now, I've not done research. I've interacted with a couple of scholars, one scholar in particular, and that guy would say, no, there's really good reason actually to think that December 25th is a legitimate day that Christ could have been born. There really is. And to me, that seems to ring true and make sense. So I lean in that direction. I think it really was December 25th. Also, time out. It seems like anytime there's a big day in the church, and Satan knows about it, he's trying to put some sort of a counterfeit in. I'm just thinking of Halloween and Reformation Day. I'm thinking of Easter and bunnies and all that. And so it seems like there's always some sort of a counterfeit floating around. And you could say, well, which one was first? I kind of think if there really is a grand scheme against God, it makes sense that the true thing is there and then Satan tries to mimic it. But I'm not going to push that. I have done all the research. So maybe it's not December 25th. I think it probably could be. At the very least, let's consider it this way. What's happening in the empire amongst the pagans on that day? Not good things, like terrible stuff. And so it doesn't surprise me that the pagans are doing their bad thing, and then the Christians are like, well, we're not going to celebrate that. Let's celebrate something else. So some would say, and this is depending on when you think the date of Christ was born, if they're just using that date, then some would say what they did is they purged Christmas. They used that date and then purged out the pagan elements and had their own celebration of Christ on that day. And it doesn't matter which way you take it. Did Christ really get born on that day? Is it not? We just picked that day. You go back to that day and you don't find any of the wicked pagan practices with Christmas, and you don't find any of the paganism. No Christian, I don't think there was any Christians who thought, I'm actually worshiping Saturn, we just have a different name for it. Like that's not how it was from the beginning. It was the character of it was different. Like if I put a Honeycrisp apple in front of you and I put a Cosmic Crisp apple in front of you, Could you tell the difference? Some of you could. Like, Honeycrisp has like this really interesting sweetness. Cosmic is like more of a smooth sweetness. But some of you would eat them and be like, I had an apple. Okay? And that's fine. That's fine. And probably those of you who are like that, and you're like, I also don't smell things very well. Okay, we probably talk about your nose too. But if I put an apple here, and then I put a tomato down, I know there are a few of you who have nasal issues. Okay, that'd be kind of, but for the most of us, we're going to know the difference, right? And so when you think about 350, Christmas celebration with the Christians, and Saturnalia or Sol Invictus, like, it's apples to tomatoes, okay? It's apples to oranges. It's apples to potatoes, whatever you want to say. But it's not like version of apple versus version of apple. No one would have been confused. No one, okay? So I think looking back, I don't see that. Now, there is another issue, though. Today, what do we have? When we talk about the Christmas celebration today, you have two modern versions, okay? You have what I call commercial Christmas, which is like Santa and gifts and decorations. And then you have what I would call Christian Christmas, which is like Luke 2, Jesus' birth, worship, rejoicing, that sort of thing. I would say that for sure the Christian Christmas is not at all related to those pagan things. Paganism didn't figure in how it was born out. Christians didn't think like we've got to make our own version of this for us. It's just the way Christians believe, and it's what the Bible says. Now, the commercial Christmas, that's where it gets a little more tricky. So Santa, I mean, I'm again, like, I don't go around the neighborhood BB gunning little Santa figurines or anything like that, but I'm not, that's never been my thing. And some people think it's fun to put a gift under the tree and say it's from Santa and everyone knows it's from the kids. And that's fine if you want to do that. I personally didn't do that, okay. You can debate that. Even that form doesn't look like Saturnalia or Sol Invictus. It just doesn't. That looks more like Hallmark. Like, that's what I would think of, like a Hallmark or a corporate or something like that. But I'm not thinking it's like paganism from back in the day. So I'm not trying to diminish the seriousness of that. I don't want anyone's convictions to be challenged by this. If you are like, I really do think a Christmas tree is German paganism, oh, maybe, but when I put up a Christmas tree, I definitely am not thinking of German paganism. I am not. I just think it's pretty. I've heard only the Christmas reasons for it. I'm okay with it. So I would say that when someone makes the point, okay, that Christmas looks like a pagan thing, so it's just a pagan holiday, what they're trying to say is humans make up all these fake religions. Christmas is just one more of those. Well, I think Christmas is true. I think Christianity is true. But aside from that, this one is like that one of these things is not like the other, okay? Like, these are all whatever they are, tomatoes, potatoes, whatever. This is an apple, and it doesn't taste the same. So I don't think you need to be afraid if you do anything holiday-ish or Christmassy, or if someone says to you Christmas is a pagan holiday, you're a pagan. You don't have to think you're a pagan. You're not a pagan. You didn't do anything pagan-y. So, what's next on my slide here? So I would say it's not a pagan holiday, and when people say that, they're just emphasizing the accidental similarities. So John and I both have long sleeves on today. John and I both like coffee. We're the same person. That doesn't follow. None of you would think that. And it's the same with Christianity and Christmas and then paganism and their celebrations. There are some similarities at times, the date, giving gifts. I don't know about role swapping. I don't think that's ever happened. I mean, there's like we're all in Christness, but I don't think that came from there. But those are accidentals. But the essentials are, what are you worshiping, these pagan gods? You're not doing that. So here's so there's essential differences. And then they just assume that we're borrowing of myths. I don't think that's true either. Okay, so here's my final illustration. Maybe this will help, maybe it won't. This is kind of a work in progress. All right, so imagine, so what happens every June in our country, although this year it happened oddly less. Some of you are like, I don't know if I can say this. You must not be very proud of what you're about to talk about. Okay, Pride Month, right? It's where everyone's social media icons suddenly become rainbow, right? And there's like multicolor, and it's like sort of a nod in that direction. You can't go in Target for like a month. And Yeah, and so you change your social media things, you kind of say things about alternative lifestyles, which I would say are sinful lifestyles. And and then at the end of the month, it's gone. Now, again, these are conscience issues, okay? After what Target did like 10 years ago, I kind of didn't shop there for a long time, just because it's fine if you do, but I felt like when I walked in the door, I was voting in favor of that by giving them my money. So I stayed away. If you didn't, that's okay. I'm not judging you. But I'm just saying, like, it felt weird to me. And then eventually I was like, okay, I think it's been long enough. I don't think that anymore. So I think I went in and bought a phone case once, and then they did some other stupid thing. But do you see how, no, I can't remember what it was. It wasn't the bathroom thing. It was like, maybe it was anyways, we probably can't talk about it in this context. You know what I mean? So I got to where I just don't want to do that, and so I would go and shop at like Walmart or somewhere else. So do you see how like I just didn't want to be involved in it? And that was just a minimal thing. Well, I'm definitely not changing my social media icon to have any sort of a rainbow on it. Like, I'm not doing those things. Well, what if it got so bad in our culture that unless you openly denied it, everyone assumed everyone followed it? Well, I'd probably try to do something to openly deny it, right? I'm not going to sit there and miscommunicate if I can avoid it. And so then what if Christians were like, you know what, why don't we do this? Every June, when that's going absolutely terrible, what if we made it a month where we were going to pray for our country and pray for our culture? And so every day we're going to pray, and what we'll do is we'll put on our icons. Remember back in the day on social media when you could put like a sticker on your picture? I mean, it's kind of like those. But we have like a little praying hands emoji, okay? Like we put praying hand emojis on it. And so Christians start doing that, and then maybe they even have like prayer gatherings. And then after maybe 2 or 3 decades of doing this, we decide we always start the month off with a prayer meeting at church, and then we, throughout the month, talk about praying and pray, and then the last day of the month, we have a giant party at church where we have a big, huge potluck, there's no paganism, and we rejoice over the fact that God has answered prayer and we can trust in Him. We call it Prayer Month. You got Pride Month, you got Prayer Month. Let's say 500 years go by, and we don't even remember Pride Month. We just do Prayer Month. And some historians like, hey, actually, I don't know if you know about the historic roots of Prayer Month. It's actually homosexual. Like, that actually started as a homosexual worship, and then they just kind of tweaked some things. Do you see the problem there with that? To me, that's the same as someone who says Christmas is just a pagan holiday. It's not at all the same. May have been around the same situation. Maybe it was even a response to something going on in the culture. But you can't say it's the same thing. So my opinion is that you don't have to think you're a pagan if you celebrate Christmas. No one would say that that's an actual thing. So if someone tries to tell you that Christianity is just another mythical, man-made, pagan religion, don't fall for it. Buy gifts for each other. Put up a tree if your conscience allows you. Drink eggnog. If you like that, I do. Put it in your coffee is even better. Kiss your spouse if you have one. Under the mistletoe. Feel free. Whatever. But when you do this, thank God for sending His Son to be the Savior of the world. You're not being pagan when you do that. You're giving thanks in all things and honoring your Creator. And you don't have to worry about being a pagan. All right, I've never had 9 minutes left over at the end of Sunday school. I think I can actually take questions. And Pastor Danny's not even here to talk. So, go ahead.
What about the name, Christian Mass?
Yeah. So I should say this right now. This was a chapter in a book that I wrote, and I just contributed this big thing, this work. And my question was just, is it a pagan holiday? But I know there's like, where does Christmas come from? Where does Kris Kringle come from? Where does the Christmas tree? I didn't do any research into any of that, so I don't know that I think it goes back to the Catholics' Mass on Christmas. But I don't remember the history of that, so I wouldn't actually. If anyone else had that information, you went, Do you have that information? Oh. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Number 2.
With the Catholic Church, I not ever been a part of it. However, you see in other cultures, missionaries go, you see other national type holidays were then converted or brought into a Catholic more tradition for that region. I've been under the impression that Christmas was much along those same lines.
historically, it's always been connected to the birth of Christ, as far as I could tell, like from this. I haven't found, so Catholicism is famous for their syncretism. Syncretism is when you do what you just described. You take something in the culture and you're like, we have that too. So there's the Mother Earth deity, okay? And I don't remember where this was in the Catholic realm, but there's a bunch of pagans who believe in the Mother Earth deity. And so what does the Catholic Church say? We have a mother deity also. Her name's Mary. Come to the Catholic Church. So there's lots of stuff where they just totally syncretize. I don't know this firsthand, but in certain regions of the world today, there's a lot of syncretism with like spiritism and animism and mystical stuff. I am not familiar with how much Christmas is a part of that. And looking back, I think that'd be kind of a stretch. I mean, I think the Catholics could have used it that way. The hard thing with the Catholic Church is, when does it start? So Catholic just means universal in Latin, but you don't really have a developed Roman Catholic form, which is the form we're all against, until, I don't know, the papacy, 1000 AD, 15, I mean, by 1500 you've got it codified because it's being opposed by the Protestants. But going back before that, everything's kind of muddy. So sometimes you have someone who seems like, hey, we would probably agree with many things with this church thinker. And then you have Catholics who will hold on to bones from saints because they're magical, and they'll put like gold jewels on them and call it a relic. And there's everything in between. So I'm not familiar. That could be a thing, but I'm not familiar with that either. Maybe it's good I'm not answering questions every week. This is going great. Tell me you have a third for me. Okay. Anyone else have any questions I could not answer? No? I mean, there's a lot I can not answer, people. I mean it. I'm serious. Yes. Oh. Then I saw who it was. Yes, Esperanza. We have a history in class of going back and forth. In a good way.
When you're talking about like the commercialization of Christmas, I get called a Grinch a lot because I'm like, so many gifts and like the decorations and the music with Mariah Carey. Like, I guess,
It's all paganism, isn't it? Yeah.
I guess my big question was like about gifts. Like, there's just so much, and like we don't need more stuff. In my opinion.
I'd like to call my wife up here to address that. Yeah, the not needing more stuff, that's, yeah, I feel that. Are you just asking for an opinion? Okay. Sure. So in the Bible, you should do a study on giving gifts. There's good reason to give gifts in the Bible at certain occasions. So I don't think gifts are sin or wrong. Are you asking, do those things distract from what we really ought to be thinking about? Or are you just saying, like, I'm tired of stuff. Why do people keep giving me stuff?
I mean, I guess it's a combination of the two because it
Okay.
does get to a distraction point where we all go over to grandma's house for gifts and they're like, oh, hey, it's Christmas. We should sing a song or read a Bible.
No, I think that's true. That's true. Like, you can miss it.
Modify that too and just say, how do we make it more essential?
How do we make gifts?
No, just the holiday.
I don't think that. Well, I will say this. Growing up, my parents did the best they could, and they did a really good job, and I'm very thankful. But they were essentially both first-generation Christians, and so we had a Christmas tree. They never did the Santa thing until I was like 8. And then my grandma tried to like put a thing under for us cousins under the tree from Santa. And we're like, who's this from? And Grandma's like, Santa. And we're like, no, who's it really from? And she's like, Santa. And I think we're like, we know Santa's not real. And she's like, oh, no, he is. It was like weird. So like there just wasn't a lot of purposeful stuff. But then I found out that as I got older, there were churches that actually have like Christmas services on Christmas Eve. And I remember thinking, why do you do that? I'm not saying we have to do that. But there was just like in the church, there was a life of talking about Christmas different than my background. So I'd say like at the church, in your local church, it helps to be talking about it. And then secondly, I think you can oppose the fun stuff of Christmas, like the cultural stuff. I'm not opposed to that. And I have wondered about the gift things. Evan, plug your ears. We don't know if we're going to do gifts next year. No, I'm just kidding. But I do think like leading the way in our families of reading about the nativity and studying about it and talking about it. I know a couple of families who will actually sing, just sing regularly. Do you want to jump in on this? Oh man. Well, it would be a contribution. Well, we used to get our kids Lego Advent calendars. I don't think that's the same thing, right? That's not what you're talking about. Why don't you describe an Advent calendar for us? And I think we've been doing, Paul Tripp has one, and I think last year we did a different one, and I think we've had some in the years past too. So I think that could be something good. Do you have anything you've done? Okay. You're not going to understand this, but I'm giving you 3 emojis. One is a Christmas tree. See, students get this, but, well, that's a lot. I usually give like 1 emoji for a good comment, but 3 was up there. Tim always opposes my emoji giving. Tim is my emoji Grinch. Any other sorry, this part of it I didn't have anything prepared about that part, just the paganism.
So just thinking through all of these associations, these accidental similarities, some of the historical overlaps, things that there's a broad awareness, the accusations, like you said, that come toward us as Christians that we've adopted some other thing, tried to make it our own, but all these kinds of things. What kind of cautions might you give for,
Sure.
There's Yuletide, like those things come from the Nordic and the German, the Christmas. So some of these elements that can
Sure.
become distractions for us, or maybe just because we know the world is seeing these things, making these connections that we're not making ourselves, do we take extra caution to be careful how much we utilize those things or make of them kind of idea?
So I just thought paganism was all I was going to talk about today. This is all like conscience. No, what that reminds me of is when Mr. Trainer came and spoke, and he talked about different associations and principles. So you probably need to be careful, I would say. And also, I purposely don't say what I think about some of these things publicly because I want to be careful with conscience issues. And also, sometimes you're like growing into understanding something. So probably 10 years ago, I thought less importantly about certain things, and 10 years before that, even less. And so I'm growing in that. So I would just say maybe be careful. I do think it's not wrong to wonder about things and look into them. So like, I'm not trying to besmirch anyone who's like, really the Christmas tree is completely tied to paganism. You just don't know, Andy. I'm not opposed to that at all. And I would say if your conscience has any issue in it, you always obey your conscience. Always. That'd be I don't know what a Yule log is. I think it's like a cake thing you make. That's all I know. Is that what it is?
Yeah, from
Okay.
Nordic and German has to do with kind of like a reincarnation, new life, a wheel thing. There's a lot of things associated with it.
So that sounds like paganism to me. That the reincarnating, that's definitely Canaanite in my mind. So, okay, all right. I would caution you not to do reincarnation things at Christmas. Hey, look at the time. Look at the time. No, I'm just kidding. So John had his hand up. I feel like I picked on him, so I got to let him have the final question. I'll give you 3 emojis for that, John. All right, Merry Christmas, I think.